Welcome to the Land Your Bet Show. I'm your host, Nate Weitzer, bringing you a Monday Night Football breakdown to close Week 14. We got a good one here out in LA. Eagles at the Los Angeles Chargers. Lots of injury news to monitor here, although we do know the situation with the Eagles. Not official news from the Chargers, but it does indicate, based on what we know, that Omari and Hampton's going to return, that Justin Herbert's going to play through a broken wrist on his non-throwing arm. That started to cause some line movement here. We got Chargers down to +2, +1.5 at some spots. I've seen it touch and then kind of toggled back. More money is actually coming down on the Eagles. I don't understand who is trying to back the Eagles at this point when they're missing their best offensive and defensive linemen. Jalen Carter going to be out for this one and probably multiple games. Lane Johnson, we know, is on IR, and their offense has just hit the tank without Lane Johnson, as if it could get any worse. They might have the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL just based on what he's doing with this level of talent and how far they have tanked offensively. And I mean, it's a bad matchup for Hurts against a zone defense. His splits have kind of regressed more towards the mean in terms of being equally mediocre against man and zone, but he has been far worse against zone throughout his career, especially this season. Kind of a similar matchup against the Packers we saw in Week 10 is facing this Chargers defense. A lot of zone drop coverage, still generating pressure with Khalil Mack. So I think it's going to be a long day for this Eagles offense. Definitely could look towards the under. It's 41.5 because these are bottom 5 pace teams, and the Chargers in particular are playing at the slowest pace in their last 5 games. They have the fewest snaps, offensive plays per game. It's just incredibly slow as they try to deal with their own issues on the offensive line. I don't know if this Philly defensive line is really going to capitalize on that. And then you look at the other side of the ball. That's just really why you back the Chargers here. I mean, Philly is 5th worst in third down conversion rate. Chargers are number 1 when at home in terms of their offense converting third downs. Their defense is also top 5 shutting down on third downs. And Jesse Minter's a fantastic coordinator. They're going to give Hurts a lot of problems. So I would definitely look at the Chargers as a teaser leg to kind of springboard into Week 15 with whatever else you want, because there's absolutely, I won't talk in absolutes, but there seems like no way the Eagles are winning at margin anywhere against anyone, especially against a solid opponent. But Jalen Hurts, I mentioned, might struggle here. 190 is the passing yards prop, and that's a little low to be scared to fade, but I just don't really see him hitting deep plays here against the Chargers defense that is so good at limiting deep passes, especially at home. I mean, part of that's just the competition they played, because their last 3 visiting quarterbacks have been Geno, Aaron Rodgers, and Carson Wentz, who got knocked out of that game. But at SoFi, they're allowing just 3.6 adjusted yards per attempt, which would be 2 yards better than anyone in the NFL. That compares to 6.2 on the road. Overall, they're just behind Houston and Seattle in terms of the adjusted yards per attempt they allowed. So they force you to dink a dime a lot, take what's underneath. I would consider fading Hurts on the yard, but I think you could still flip and say over on the completions, which is like 17.5, or over on the attempts at 28.5, and just be like, they're going to have the ball a lot, but they're not going to be able to push it downfield. So he's going to have to drop back a lot. Chargers are also elite, at least in the last few weeks, in terms of keeping quarterbacks in the pocket, not letting them run. So I think the game plan is going to force a lot of pocket passing from Jalen Hurts. That is not his strong point. And maybe they can string some stuff together, the Eagles, because Devontae Smith is pretty good beating zone. A.J. Brown's coming alive. I think he'll find some gaps in the zone. And they do have Goddard to kind of matriculate the ball against the Chargers defense. It's not great against the tight end. So I would look towards the attempts and the completions for Hurts here. Be a little wary about taking the yardage, but, it can happen either way. And I think if you're dumping it down, receptions for Saquon Barkley make a lot of sense. I mean, he's juiced up for the 3 receptions at -120. That was a pretty good price, in my opinion. I said this is similar to the Packers matchup in Week 10, where Barkley, because it was such a defensive slugfest, he just touched the ball 25 times, and his carries prop is at 18.5 here too. It's another situation where, like, looking at volume, not production for these Eagles skill players, because they should have the ball consistently. If they can pick up some third downs, Who knows? But the Chargers defense, just the way they play, they invite you to take the short run, to take these short passes. They allow like 4.5 to 5 yards per carry against any legitimate offense. And they're just coming off facing the Raiders. So it's like kind of hard to handicap them because the Raiders are pathetic run offense, but then again, so are the Eagles. So maybe that's why we look at the receptions for Barkley, who has kind of alternated between these big receiving games and these and more of a rushing game, or a game where he has 0 receptions basically. But 2 games ago against the Dallas team that plays heavy zone and shuts down the run, 7 of 8 targets. Again, so we could see that as a reason to back him here against the zone heavy team. We could see the fact that he caught 3 balls for 41 yards against the Packers in a very similar matchup in week 10 as a reason to back him. And just the fact that there's no third down back for the Eagles is like Will Shipley, I guess, could come out there and get a couple, but Tank Bigsby is really just a straight ahead runner if he's going to spell Barkley. And despite the limited receiving usage in a couple of these last games, his snap count continues to climb. And maybe it was just those tougher matchups. I mean, Detroit and Dallas and Chicago, those defenses are all playing very well in these last 3. That's who he's faced. Detroit and Dallas are only with 25% of their yards on the ground in these last 3, and the Chargers are much higher because of the defensive strategy that I'm talking about. Let's look at the other side of the ball here. Quentin Johnson is definitely going to be a buy low here, about 34.5 yards. I think you have it. And I like his matchup here because, as you see, he draws the weakest link in the Eagles secondary, really in the entire Eagles defense, which is Adoree Jackson, the number 2 corner. Their safeties are also struggling. Reed Blankenship not playing very well on one side there. So I like Johnston, who basically makes hay off these like deep digs and in cutters. I like him finding some soft points in the Eagles defense, while Ladd McConkey prospectively gets Cooper DeJean, Keenan Allen gets Quinyon Mitchell, or vice versa. Like, I think those 2 guys who have really been established as Justin Herbert's favorite targets, I think the Eagles will key in on that and be on those guys with their better corners. And there's just not a bigger drop off really in terms of going from like top 15 corners in the game to like 120th in Adoree Jackson, depending on the rating you get. Like, PFF grade, very unkind to the man. I also think the Eagles defense is going to absolutely sell out on the run at times. They were just humiliated last Friday by that Bears rushing attack. And Quentin Johnson is going to thrive off play action if the Chargers are able to establish some run. Again, those in breakers are usually money off play action because you suck in the linebackers and then you're able to just hit it over the top. Last 2 games have just been so weird for this Chargers passing attack with a bye week in between. They got dominated by Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, Herbert didn't even get to 100 yards. And then they dominated the Raiders, who, as I said, are just not threatening anybody. And they really didn't feel the need to have any passing volume in that game. They really just rode my man here, Kimani Vidal, who is going to be an interesting spot. I mean, Omarion Hampton is supposed to play. I got to assume he'll have some restrictions. He'll probably be around 55% of the snaps, maybe 60% if you're optimistic. But they did not let on how bad his ankle injury was. Clearly, I mean, he missed about 9 weeks because it was a partial, a hairline fracture to the ankle, a partial break, not just a high ankle sprain. So are you going to be cautious with him coming back? Your number 1 back going forward. You're invested a lot of draft capital to get him in the first round, right? I think you probably still work in Vidal, who's coming off a fantastic game against the Raiders. The Raiders defense, it's actually pretty good against the run. And you look there on the third point, the Eagles without Jalen Carter in a small sample, like their last 3 games, would be dead last in the NFL in rush success rate allowed. And they're not going to have him. They do still have good defensive tackles, but I don't think their edge defense is very good. So Kimani Vidal, who gets outside on these toss plays, these quick passes, I think he'll be able to get his rush plus receiving total here. If you're looking at Hampton, I do like the fact that he's only at 9.5 receiving yards in his return here. I mean, you catch 1 ball and you go there. I mean, the Eagles are allowing a league high, in fact, 10.5 yards per reception, 2 backs. And Hampton was heavily involved as a receiver prior to the injury. He did 60+ percent of the routes, 60% of the routes in his last 3, and caught 17 of 18 targets. So I mean, he could slot right back into that role if he is more of a workhorse, but I think Vidal, again, earned some usage. He had a very good pass protection grade last week. He's 11th in rushing grade on the season. It's just that the Chargers' run blocking has not been that great. But in this matchup, they might have some success against a wounded Eagles team. So that's all the time we have here for this Monday Night Football breakdown. I hope you're getting something good out of this. Visit landyourbets.com, like and subscribe to the page, and you'll see each time these videos are coming out. We'll be right back with week 15 Thursday Night Football to kick that off later this week. But until we see you next, happy betting.